got to bring our guest in because he's amazing. You want to talk about amazing dads. I can't wait for you guys to hear his story. Paul Carol is joining us, and he is the founder and creator of an amazing, amazing entity. I don't even know what to call it because there's a website, there's a podcast, there's so much there. It's the Autism Dadvocates. And I don't want the moms to be scared away at all from it because I find it's a really good resource, for all of us. But we needed a place that was just for the dads. Yes. There's more to Paul's story, though, and we're going to get to hear more about that. But I do want you to know that he is the executive director of talent development at CVS, which is CVS Health, which is just absolutely amazing. And he's someone who is one of those people who gets it done, right? So amazing to have him be a part of our community with over 20 years being a leader in the area of developing talent. But then, and he's going to tell us how he came to be in the autism world and how that spurred him, because he is so amazing, to create this space for dads. I want you to check out his podcast. I've been listening to them the last couple of weeks. It's so, so delightful. So let's get him in here and hear from him. Paul, welcome to Autism Live.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Shannon. This is a
Are
real
you
treat
kidding?
for me.
This is an honor. I always say, we love to hear from all the moms, absolutely, but we don't get to hear from enough dads. And I find it so uplifting. And every time I talk to you, Paul, I get so excited because I think the things that you're doing are just spot on, spot on. So let's dig in and talk about some of the things that we're doing. But let's talk about you briefly here. That you and I have talked about this before, that every parent has the story, right? So tell us the story. How did autism come to be a part of your everyday life?
Yeah. And it's so funny, Shannon, because there's so much power in storytelling. And I think that's a big part of Autism Dadvocate. So every story is unique. Mine is quite unique as well, only because my son had a very late diagnosis. There were no indicators, Shannon, early on of my son being any different, except for, and we all as parents know this, who I'm looking at the chat, that, that's interesting. That's a little different. But my son verbally progressed at the right age. He toilet trained in less than a week. There were no early indicators, but there were quirks. There were peccadillos. There were idiosyncrasies that caught my eye. Things like when he would write, like he was obsessive about the Arabic alphabet and would just write it nonstop, line after line, page after page. He didn't quite line up toys, but behaviors like that, a real desire for order. There were a few red flags. We got him into early intervention because of some lack of gross and fine motor skills. I particularly noticed on the playground. I was like, wow, he's really challenged just doing things kids much younger than him can do very easily. We did talk to a few specialists, and I always share this story, Shannon, because it's fascinating. I knew in my gut something was different, and I thought it was autism. And at my son's physical with his PCP, I looked the doctor right in the eye, and I said, Dr. Grumbach, do you think my son has autism? He looked me dead center and said, no, I think your son has sensory processing disorder. So like many dads, Shannon, I think dads default to denial, where I do think moms default to curiosity. And I remember driving home with my wife and saying, see, the doctor said it, like diagnosis confirmed. It wasn't really until 10 or 11 that he was diagnosed. So just a very interesting and unique journey compared to others I've heard, Shannon.
Yeah. But I got to say, I always want to hug everybody when they tell their story, because there's always some part of it where we didn't get what we needed. And I keep hoping that we're going to crest that at some point and that that's going to change. But I do think that all of us telling our stories, that I think it helps others to realize, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this. But so once you got to the point of diagnosis, Paul, how did you get from there to this place where you said, I'm going to create a place for dads where they can go and feel like they're not alone? How did that happen?
Yes. So Shannon, please forgive me because I think I may default to some gender stereotypes. Um, but it's
Bless your
part of
heart.
the motivation. And I think everything I say will land with a lot of the moms on the call. But like many dads, actually, like many parents, my first order of business was Google search.
Yeah.
And everyone on this today probably has done that. And the amount of information, the disparate information, I think we can all agree our healthcare system is so fragmented that when you get the diagnosis, you're not given a how-to manual. To be quite candid, Shannon, none of us are even given what is the logical next step. It's sort of like, here's a diagnosis, go forth, and I wish you the best of luck. So to get to answer your question, Shannon, the catalyst for Autism Dadvocate was realizing that moms completely lead in this space. Again, I'm defaulting to gender norms, so Shannon, correct me. I think my experience is moms tend to be primary care coordinators, primary therapy coordinators, uh, really the chiefs of staff for their child's everything associated with schooling and therapies, really running that. And men, I found, again, gender norm, we're lost. We don't know where we really fit. And what I've experienced through the Autism Dadvocate community is men who are lost. Uh, Many become primary breadwinners because the ugly reality of our culture is if there's an either or, where one has to take care of the child and one has to work, unfortunately, economically, it's still, and that's a statistic. That's not the world according to Paul Carroll. It makes sense for the man to be the primary breadwinner and perhaps a caregiver to neurotypical siblings. Now, again, very, very, I'm generalizing, but I created Autism Dadvocate because I needed to create a community just for dads, where the dads that feel lost, like I did, have a safe space to go where it's okay to show up authentic. It's okay to share your story. And Shannon, I don't like the V word, though I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. But yeah, where we can all be vulnerable and share, you know what? I don't have this all figured out.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's an important thing. As you were talking, I don't know if you've had a chance to interview Sean Stockman from Boys to Men yet, but I really want to recommend that you have him on the Dadvocates, because I just the other day had to rewatch our interview with him. We've got a great video of him where it's called Sean Stockman Takes Us to Church, and I needed to rewatch it for a reason the other day, and I had an aha moment where he was talking about when his son was diagnosed, and he said, I knew that I had to do everything that I could, and that meant go to work. And that meant that
Hmm.
I had to leave and I had to go out on tour. And he said, because that's what I knew that I could do. And I said, you realize that to moms, that feels like you walked away. And he said,
Yes.
no, that was me staying. That was me saying I'm all in. And in that moment, I sort of got it, that the need, where I think that we're speaking in generalities here, but a lot of times the dads go, what can they have to take action, and they say, what can I do? I can keep the roof over the head, I can keep the bus moving, I can support her, but otherwise a lot of times they don't know what else to do. And hearing Sean Stockman say that, I was like, oh, I kind of get that now. So I hope that because you guys will get on like a house on fire. He's amazing and you're amazing. It'll be two dads, amazing. So let's talk a little bit about what people can find when they go to Autism and Dadvocate, and tell us where to go, and all the things that they can find there, because it's a lot what you've done, Paul.
Thank you. And I think what I tried to achieve at Autism Advocate are a few things. The website, and thank you. I see it there. It's a website and a podcast. The website is just a community of dads where we can share our stories. And Shannon, this is so profound. I'd wonder if it's the same experience for moms, because when dads share their stories, there is a, "Oh, I thought it was just me. I thought I was the only one who struggled with it." And as I say to the dads in the community, our conversations start in the middle. They don't start at the beginning, because we have so much shared experience that there's a rapport, there's a camaraderie there immediately. So Shannon, let me share an example with you, and you
Yeah.
can share if this has been your observation as well. One of the fathers shared a compelling story of being completely aware, "Oh, my daughter doesn't get invited to birthday parties from her classmates." And I said, "That happened to me, and I thought it was just me with my warped thinking of exclusion." And then all the other dads are, "Yes, yes." When did it become that my daughter and son didn't get invited to classmates' birthday parties? You are not alone. And that profound feeling of validation where it's like, it's not just us, it's others in our community.
and and I think because of the way our society is set up, as women, we find that really early on. Because we tend to gab. Again, I'm speaking in generalities, and I know that there are exceptions to every rule, but as women, we tend to gravitate and find other people that we can talk about it with, and it just comes out. But I don't think that there's enough opportunity. I don't think there can be enough opportunity for dads to do that. But so you've got it. You've created it. You're making it happen. And dads can go to the website. Again, it's up there. You can just go to autism-dadvocate.org. But if you want to get to the podcast, you just do the slash and the podcast to get that. I love that Amanda's written in and said, "I never thought about it like that. This would explain why my husband is so dead set on working himself to the
Yep.
bone. I would rather support than money, but this special needs life is expensive, so I understand better now." And that's healing to the moms to know, Paul. It's really healing to the moms.
Yeah, and I really appreciate Amanda's comment because it gets to the crux of some gender norms. Men, we feel judged by how we provide. And so if we are lost, we will default to the gender norm of, I have to be the provider. As you said, Amanda, this is expensive. So that is where I, as a man and as a father, can step up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard. I always say I don't think it's been my finest moment with how I supported my husband in doing that. You've had Rodney Pete on your podcast, which is that's an amazing, amazing show. We've had Holly on many times, and Holly says, if she could do anything over again, she would be more supportive because she says she wasn't. That she told him, "I'm on Autism Avenue, and you either need to get there or we're leaving without you." And that it took Rodney a little while longer. And that is not unusual. There are times when it's the complete opposite, where dad gets there first and it takes mom longer, but we certainly hear the tale often that it takes dad a little while longer. Do you guys talk about why that is, that it takes longer for you guys to really be out of the denial?
I think it's partly gender norms, and I would agree with you, Shannon. I think that women intuitively are better connectors. When presented with a problem, women come from a place of curiosity and say, who do I need to talk to? Where
Mhm.
can I go? Who are my resources? Whereas men, because we have a default to fixing or solution, if we don't have the solution at hand, we can be paralyzed and we can be in denial. And Shannon, it's so funny you talked about Rodney Pete, because for
Yeah.
Mother's Day, I just had Holly Robinson Pete on my
Oh,
pod. And
wonderful.
to hear both sides of the
Ooh,
same story, to hear the dad's perspective and then Holly's perspective, wow, was it fascinating.
that's
And
wonderful.
the one story I love, I'm a big fan of stories, Shannon, is Holly was all in on RJ with autism and his diagnosis and knowing what he needed. And there's a powerful story that both of them share where Rodney was trying to engage and play with RJ. And Holly was like, no, 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 you can't do that. No, no, no. You like that. He doesn't like that, or that does not work for him. And Rodney's default was like, but I know my son, he's my child, and I will engage him. And it was just a great representative story of how you have two parents trying to do the right thing, but coming from completely different sides of the equation. And that causes like fractiousness in the marriage, a
Yeah.
chasm that can open up between mother and father.
Absolutely. Well, Kathy has written in and said, I felt abandoned. And to this
Mm.
day, it feels like he'll do anything work related rather than something family oriented. And maybe this show gives you a context for that, Kathy, but maybe inviting him to visit the Autism Dadvocates and maybe listening to the podcast, maybe, how do you think that moms should encourage dads to get there? What's the selling point so we can get them on your site, Paul?
I think men do have to take a step forward. Kathy, I completely agree. I think I'm defaulting to work because it's safe.
Yeah.
That's where I can default to. Whereas I think we as fathers need to step into the situation. And I think the challenge as fathers is we feel like we're years behind because the women have been the primary care coordinators and the primary therapies and know everything. And it's awkward to stumble or fumble as dads when it's our own children. So I would recommend the website and the podcast to dads because I'll tell you why, Shannon. Creating a psychologically safe place for dads to get real, I think,
Mm.
is step number one. And I say this when people are like, well, what is Autism Dadvocate? There's so much stuff out there, Paul. And I always say this: before we talk about your son, before we talk about your daughter, before we talk about how you help them, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your unique experience. That is step one. Then step two, we'll get to all the things you need to do as a dad to help your son or daughter. But I don't like rushing into utility because there's just so much stuff out there. And I think as a dad, and I'll be honest, I struggled. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know
Yeah.
where to start. And I think Autism Dadvocate is like step one.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, Shannon. Maybe you've done this on the series. It's so hard to get good statistics and data, but what I can share with you through my own research is that fathers of autistic children typically have higher rates of mental health issues, higher rates of depression, higher rates of addiction, be it
Mhm.
alcohol, uh, opiates, or whatever. And as you and I have shared, Shannon, the marital separation and divorce rate is anywhere from 75 to 80%. It's appalling
Yeah.
because it's such a challenging situations for mothers and fathers. So I want to address those things with fathers because if I help the dad, then the dad helps the children and the mother and everybody in the family tends to benefit.
Amen to that. Can I also add to your statistical pile more stuff that we won't want to hear? But
Oh no.
I've been told for the last 10 years that dads are of children with autism need to have their prostate checked more often because their numbers for prostate cancer are higher, and they think it's related to stress. So ladies, that's one of those things on the list. Have your man get that checked. And men, it's one of those things. And for the ladies, we are more likely to have breast cancer. We have to do our checks for that more often. So isn't that extra fun? Kathy has said that she is going to invite him, and that this is really fun. And keep in mind, they can be listening to the podcast in the car on the way to work, which is a great way to do it. Marcia says, my father, my son's grandfather, always just wanted to know where he could write a check
Ugh.
to fix this autism thing. He didn't know what to do and couldn't stand seeing his grandson or me struggling. I see that as a thing, Paul, that as much as we say about how women are so emotional, I sort of feel like it's the opposite, that it feels like to me, the dads struggle with the emotional side of this because emotionally, this is a charged thing and they very much want to fix it. I see dads being, if their kid is frustrated, boy, it's the dads that we have to say, it's okay, let them be frustrated. Do you find that to be true, Paul?
It is. I'm looking at Marcia's comment and it breaks my heart because clearly that's a situation where the man cannot process his emotions and so he's defaulting. And I love how you wrote it, Marcia. I got to fix this. That is how I validate my role in this whole situation. I will share part of the catalyst for me creating Autism Advocate was my own experience, and I have no hesitation to share. It was May of 2018 where I hit the valley. I felt completely isolated.
Mm.
There was nobody in my neighborhood, nobody in my community that was a parent of an autistic child. Like many of us on today, like the extended family did not help at all.
Mhm.
And because of that situations at work, I had to seek counseling, which as a man is a huge step of courage, by the way. And that really helped me to process what I was going through. And once I came through that, then I actually launched and created Autism Dadvocate in early 2019. Again, gender norms. I think women by nature have better emotional vocabulary, better emotional literacy. And though it's a highly charged situation, I think women are just better equipped to handle how intense the situation is. And men struggle, fathers struggle.
But it's not because they're without emotion, you guys. I think when we as women look at it and go, well, he's being unemotional about it, I suspect that that's, festering somewhere and boiling up. Lots of people writing in. Marcia says, are you finding that any of the dads are recognizing the autism traits in themselves?
Uh, Boy, what a great question and a loaded one.
Yes.
Because I've actually thought that myself. There is a tick that my son's name is Vaughn, does. And I've admitted to no one that when no one is looking, I do that same tick. So
Interesting.
I do think, I don't know, but I don't know. But Marsha, I think your question is a very fair one, that perhaps there is some guilt, again, using a good emotion, that maybe I'm the one who is responsible for my son or daughter. Maybe it's my genes, my environment. Um, and I'm looking at Jen, I'm looking at Amanda's comment.
Yeah.
Yes, so you were one of the 75 to 80%. That breaks my heart to hear that.
Yeah, that her first marriage didn't survive. But I don't know if you saw that she really lucked out in her second marriage, won the lotto with her second husband, and
Oh, wonderful.
we're grateful for that, Amanda. Christina says sometimes men are the main caregivers and their wife struggles. I a family on the bus. It's the mother that has issues. I'm not sure that I understand exactly, Christina, what the rest of that sentence was, but yes, it can be the flip. I have a very good friend that quite, and I always like to give the asterisk. It's not everybody's story, because I have a very good friend who is an amazing mom and is totally on board now. But she'll be the first person to tell you that her husband had to sit her down and say, "Babe, you are in some serious denial, and we need to get on this bus. We need to be moving in a certain direction." And she was still saying, no, everything is fine. It just took her a while longer, and sometimes it does, and we can't judge ourselves for how long it takes us. But when we can get on board and say, okay, how can I be of service to my child? I think it feels better. Didn't when you realized, Paul, okay, this is what I'm facing, and you, the first time that you knew something to do, was that your story, that you felt better once you had something to do?
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Like, men want to take action. And I think the challenge, and again, gender norms, asterisk,
Yeah.
uh, when one valuable lesson I learned about myself is when my wife would verbalize how challenging the situation it was, I would want to either fix it, solution it, or offer suggestions. And what I learned in hindsight is I was doing it wrong. She just wanted to be heard. She just wanted me to be patient and just listen to me. I don't need you to interject. I don't need you to offer anything, but you need to hear my experience, Paul. And that's a valuable insight for us as dads to hear.
Yeah.
Like, just listen. Shut up and listen.
Oh, there is that. There, and all the moms are going, we love Paul. Paul's great. I need to have my husband listen to Paul. Because I think sometimes men just need to hear that, because they don't know.
Yeah, and what I would invite the moms to think about is when your husband or partner does interrupt or offer a solution, that is, we are thinking we are helping. So it's not, it's actually coming from a place of good intentions, but it is perfectly fair for moms to say, look, I just need to be quiet. I just need to listen. I don't need you to help. or I don't need, you'll help me by listening,
Right.
but I don't need solutions or fixes. I've got that. And that is something, that is a change in my behavior that I have made.
Yeah. Well, and I sometimes have had to feed phrases to my husband because he'll listen, but then at the end he doesn't know what to say. And so sometimes I will say to him, I'll say, "Okay, I need for you to just sit still and listen to me. I need to offload this. And at the end, I need for you to be on my side and tell me that I'm doing a good job and that it's all going to be okay. That's all I need." And he goes, "Oh, I can do that." Uh, he's like, "Oh, is that what's required here? Sign me up." And he pulls up a chair and he can do it. But sometimes I have to be that specific with him. Are you that way, Paul? Do you find that helpful?
I used to be. I think I'm better now, but I like what you said about, look, I just need you to affirm how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Like that is helpful.
Yes.
And so Shannon, I'm looking at what Christine is. My husband
Yeah.
just stands back and watch when I need help. So advice I would give to fathers is listen and ask open-ended questions, truly coming from a place of curiosity. How can I help in this situation? And the moms may say, get out, like
Right.
you're exacerbating and potentially creating a meltdown situation if there's two of us in the room. So I think that's another thing I'm trying to teach fathers to do is when you interact with your partner, how can you truly come from a place that helps her?
And from the mom's side, Paul, what do you recommend that Christina say when she needs help when her husband is just standing there?
I think because women are intuitive, occasionally there's some assumptions. You can tell I need help. Can't you see what?
Right.
Like it is okay. It's not patronizing if you're very explicit. I need your help. Can you please do this?
Yeah.
And if it's not in the moment, after the moment is perfectly fine.
Yeah, absolutely. We used to do a thing, my husband and I don't know if you and your wife did this, where we would say, "I need to tag out." And
Oh,
right? Because like something would be happening, and we sort of set up that one person at a time would deal, that we wouldn't tag team on him at the same time. But then when I was reaching critical mass, I would say, "I need to tag out," and my husband would go, I'm totally in. But that was a discussion that we had when everything was okay, like at 1 o'clock in the morning when our son was asleep, where we go, "Let's say this," and that's how we'll know how to do that. I do also want to acknowledge that way back at the beginning, somebody asked a question about behavior, and I'm going to get to it before we get to the end. So, Roxy, don't give up. I'm going to get to your question, but I got a couple of things because we're ending our time here with Paul. But Paul, really quickly, I have some rapid fire questions for you because the podcast is amazing, you guys. You've got to check it out. I want to go and listen to the Holly Robinson Pete interview now, but check out some of the other guests that he's had as well. Traven will put the thing back up there. When does it drop at a specific time, Paul, or a day,
it
or
it doesn't drop on specific times. I can say to this group, it's about twice a month. I intentionally make the podcasts around 25 to 30 minutes. And no, it's not because men have short attention spans. I've gotten feedback that it is a great podcast episode to listen to during a commute. So
yes?
25 to 30 minutes is a very commute-like podcast.
Unless you live in LA, in which case you'll listen to
Yeah,
two of them.
yeah, you can get two
Um,
in.
so you'll get two in. And so, which guest have you had that has surprised you the most, Paul? These are the
I've
tough
made
questions.
effort to bring aboard more actually autistic guests. So I brought in
Mm.
Hunter Hansen. He is an amazing um, YouTube. He is an autistic father of three children. His insights, because I've defaulted to neurotypical guests, and I thought, wow, I really need to hear directly from the source. The other neurodiverse guest I brought in, his name is Andrew Arbo, and he is on the spectrum, and he we had an episode on driving, and because my son is 14 and he will be driving in a few years, it was fascinating
Okay.
for me to hear his experiences of how profoundly terrifying and anxiety producing it is to even think about driving.
Okay.
um so
I got
those
to
are the
check that
two.
out.
Having like actually autistic guests on the podcast for me is incredibly insightful.
I love that. So who's your be all end all dream guest? I love to put it out there. Like who would you just you want to have them on the show so bad?
It kind of hurts me because I got Rodney and Holly, and they were just as lovely as you'd expect. I know they've been on here. They are truly just the most wonderful people. I wanted to get Doug Flutie on, and not because I'm a Boston College alumni. If you don't know who Doug Flutie is, he is a college and NFL quarterback. He is an NFL commentator now, and he agreed to be on my podcast, but then his schedule got so challenging, and I'm trying to get him on. But
It's
I
going to
like
happen.
I like him because when dad, especially famous dads like a Rodney,
Yeah.
when Rodney is so forthcoming about challenging, we as dads don't feel alone.
Yeah.
And we realize, oh, I don't have to have it all figured out. Because men, man, our egos get in the way, and we would never ever want to volunteer that we struggle or don't have all the answers. And when we have guests who come on and say that, it just creates a safe atmosphere where we can tackle the problem a little bit more head on.
Well, it's amazing. We've got the website to go to. Autism-dadvocate.org is the website. If you want to get to the podcast, you put the slash in the podcast. We really are encouraging everybody. If you're listening right now, if you're watching right now, go over there, check out what is there. Paul's doing an amazing job. And it's not just for the dads. I think I'm learning so much about the dad perspective by going there, right? Which just makes us better partners. But certainly encourage, if you're a dad watching and if you're a mom, encourage your significant other to go over and watch, because Paul wants to help. Now, Paul, I have to take Roxy's question. You can stay, or I don't know if you need to go. What would you like to do?
I really want to hear Roxy's question, so I can
Okay.
certainly stay on for about 4 to 5 more minutes.
Okay, great. So that's all we've got left. Roxy wrote in early at the start of the show and said, I find it difficult every day with my son's behavior. When things get tough, I walk away. Is this a good thing? And I'm going to say that, first of all, we have to consider what we can handle in a given day. And I love some of the people that I work with. They say, is this a yes day or is this a no day? So first, you're taking your own temperature and saying, do I have it in me today? Is today a day where we can tackle something, or is today a day where we got to just take it easy on ourselves? Because if it's a day that you're taking it easy on yourself, then walking away, as long as you're not leaving the room and leaving your child to harm themselves, is a great strategy. It is not the long-term be all end all strategy in all cases, but it is in some cases. We talk all the time here about that every behavior that anybody does, that I do, that Paul does, that you do, that has a function. We do things for a reason. I drink my tea because my throat is dry. And we talked earlier about positive reinforcement. As soon as I drink it, the positive reinforcement is that my throat is less dry, right? Your kids who are on the autism spectrum are engaging in behavior because there's a reason. And the four usual suspects are to get attention, to get access to someone or something, to get away from someone or something, or because it feels good to them. That's why they're usually doing what they do. There's an asterisk. The fifth one is control when they're older, because they want to control the situation. So those are your be all end all five. And it can be a mix of two. But if I am doing something because I need your attention and I don't have the words to say, I want your attention, then I might bang my fist on the table. I might hit you. I might hit my head on the desk if that's what gets your attention. If we see that what they want is attention, the fix for that is give them more attention when they're not doing those things. And when they are doing those things, don't give them the attention, right? We don't ignore the child, but we would stop, make it so that they can't hurt themselves, but then we would ignore that behavior and not shower them with attention. If they are trying to gain access to something, and let's say they're punching the wall to gain access to something, we're not going to give it to them. But we're going to find times when they're not punching the wall to give it to them. Because remember, they have something they need. So our job becomes, how can I give the thing that they need to them in the right moment, and not for the behaviors that I don't want to see? But that takes a yes day. You gotta understand it. You gotta have maybe some support and help to understand it. It's not just something you can pull off every day. Nobody is good at this every day. But when you're ready to tackle it, we've done lots of shows about dealing with challenging behavior, and I really recommend, if you want to be specific about what the challenging behavior is, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here on Tuesdays. right into us tomorrow, and she'll give you like some real good support. Now, Paul, what do you think? What do you want to add to that? Did I
You know,
scare
it
you?
no, it's such a great question. And Roxy's question made me think of something that happened with me, and it's such a classic "it depends." Like, I like how you qualified it, Shannon. Like you said, well, if the child is in danger or self-harm or destructive, we certainly can't step away.
Yeah.
Um, but I actually do think in some circumstances it is appropriate to step away. And Shannon, if I may just share a super quick story, my
Yeah.
son had a meltdown and I had to be there present, make sure I at one point I did a little bit of restraint, but had to be present so it wasn't destructive. And then he hit that stage where I could feel it was the cortisol levels were starting to decline, and I could see. But what my son does at that point is the redundancy. He starts saying over and over and over and over and over. And I could feel my cortisol levels going up because I just couldn't take the redundancy. So I actually intentionally stepped away, knowing he's in a good place physically. I need to step away and allow him to just unwind because now I'm starting to get worked up. So I don't know if that story illustrates, but I think it's
Yeah.
fair to walk away occasionally.
Yes. Yes. It's not a bad strategy for a lot of different reasons. Julie wants to know again, what is the name of your podcast, Paul?
It's called Autism Dadvocate. It is on iTunes and Spotify. I have 28 episodes again. I intentionally make them about 30 minutes long. And I've had some great guests like Holly Robinson P, Rodney P. I hope to get a few more names that maybe this group knows because the power of storytelling cannot be underestimated.
I've got some dads for you. Marcia says husbands need to be taught the creativeness of facing and finding alternatives to use when their first line of response, confrontation, doesn't work. We teach our kids tools. Dads need to be taught the tools too. Hoping awareness of autism and early identification will help the dads today. And head on over there, Marcia, and get your husband over there because there's a lot of really great stuff happening over there at Autism Dadvocates. We're past time. Paul and I both need to go. Paul, you're amazing. Keep doing your good work. We need you. And the dads need you, but the truth is we all need you. So thank you so much for taking this time to be with us.
Thank you. Deeply humbled and appreciative to be on.
Mwah. And you guys, we're back tomorrow with Dr. Doreen Grampiche for Ask Dr. Doreen. So don't forget, you can be sending your questions now to me, or you can send them in live in the morning. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.